मेहर बाबा की जय। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय। Welcome all to today's online Sahavas program organized by Avatar Meher Baba Hyderabad Center. అవతార్ మెహర్ బాబా హైదరాబాద్ కేంద్రం వారు నిర్వహిస్తున్న నేటి ఆన్లైన్ సహవాస్ కార్యక్రమానికి అందరికీ స్వాగతం. నమో మెహర్ బాబా ప్రార్థనా గీతంతో ఈ కార్యక్రమం ప్రారంభమవుతుంది.
నమో మెహర్ బాబా నమో మెహర్ బాబా సకల చరాచర జగన్నుతా సకల చరాచర జగన్నుతా నమో మెహర్ బాబా వనా నమో నమో మెహర్ బాబా వనా నమో నమో మెహర్ బాబా నమో మెహర్ బాబా నమో మెహర్ బాబా జ్ఞాన దృష్టి జ్ఞాన దృష్టి హరిషణం కలిపదం హరిషణం అవ్యయమోక్షం అవ్యయమోక్షం నమో మెహర్ బాబా
Jai Baba. In today's program, we will be remembering Mohammad Mast, one of Baba's favorite Masts, who joined his beloved on 17th June 2003. As part of today's program, we have Bhajans till 6:20, and at 6:20, talk by Nordeen from Asheville, United States of America. Then we will have a 4 minutes video of Mohammad Masts. Then the gist of his talk follows in Telugu. And at 7:30, beloved Baba's film. And from 7:45 onwards, Naam, Dhun, silence, prayers and Arti. ఈ రోజు కార్యక్రమంలో మహమ్మద్ మస్తుని మనం గుర్తు చేసుకుంటాం. బాబాకి ఇష్టమైనటువంటి ప్రియమైనటువంటి 5 మస్తుల్లో మహమ్మద్ మస్త్ ఒకరు. ఆయన 17th June 2003లో బాబాలో ఐక్యమయ్యారు. ఈరోజు కార్యక్రమంలో భాగంగా 6:20 వరకు భజన్స్ ఉంటాయి. 6:20 పీటర్ నార్డీన్ యాష్వెల్ యునైటెడ్ స్టేట్స్ నుండి మహమ్మద్ లైఫ్ మీద ప్రసంగిస్తారు. ఆ తర్వాత మహమ్మద్ మస్త్కి సంబంధించిన ఒక వీడియో ఉంటుంది. ఆయన ప్రసంగం యొక్క తెలుగు అనువాదం 7:20 ఉంటుంది. తర్వాత బిలవెడ్ బాబాస్ ఫిల్మ్ 7:45 నుండి నామ్, ధున్, సైలెన్స్, ప్రేయర్స్ మరియు ఆర్తి. నౌ ఏ హిందీ భజన్ బై సాహిల్ శ్రీవాస్తవ ఫ్రమ్ లక్నో.
मेहरबान 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 जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान 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 जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान 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 आस भरी है तुमसे मिलने, तड़पत है मेरे प्राण, आस भरी है तुमसे मिलने, तड़पत है मेरे प्राण, दीन दया घन प्रेम के सागर बसो मेरे ही आन, दीन दया घन प्रेम के सागर बसो मेरे ही आन, बसो मेरे ही आन मेहरबान 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 जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान 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 मन चंचल है शत्रु हमारा नित करता अभिमान, मन चंचल है शत्रु हमारा नित करता अभिमान, तुमरे मिलन में पर्दा बनकर रहता है नादान, तुमरे मिलन में पर्दा बनकर रहता है नादान, रहता है नादान मेहरबान 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 जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान मेहरबान पर भाऊ एक अजान। पाऊं सुख तुम्हारी मर्जी में, चाहूं यही वरदान। पाऊं सुख तुम्हारी मर्जी में, चाहूं यही वरदान। चाहूं यही वरदान। मेहरबान 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 मेहरबान। जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम। जपूं तुम्हारा नाम मेहरबान, जपूं तुम्हारा नाम। मेहरबान 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 मेहरबान।
Jai Baba, Brother Sahil. Now, a Telugu bhajan by Pranita Meher from Nizamabad.
अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय। కంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా। కంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా। కనుల కరువు తీరగా మన కర్మలెల్ల నసింపగా। కనుల కరువు తీరగా మన కర్మలెల్ల నసింపగా। కంటిరే కనుగొంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా। ఎన్ని జన్మల పుణ్యమో ఇది, ఎన్ని నోముల ఫలితమో। ఎన్ని జన్మల పుణ్యమో ఇది, ఎన్ని నోముల ఫలితమో। మనసంతా అతడి నిండెనే మనకెంత భాగ్యము పట్టెనే। మనసంతా అతడి నిండెనే మనకెంత భాగ్యము పట్టెనే। కంటిరే కనుగొంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా। రోజు రోజు స్మరణ చేయ రాతి మనసు కరిగిపోయే। రోజు రోజు స్మరణ చేయ రాతి మనసు కరిగిపోయే। ప్రేమ నెరుగని ఎడద నిండా, ప్రేమ నెరుగని ఎడద నిండా। ప్రేమ నింపెను తెలియకుండా, ప్రేమ నింపెను తెలియకుండా। కంటిరే కనుగొంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా। రామకృష్ణుల అందమాది బుద్ధదేవుని అందమేమో। రామకృష్ణుల అందమాది బుద్ధదేవుని కనుగొంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా చూపు మనపై బరపెను సంస్కారమెల్లను బోవునే చూపు మనపై బరపెను సంస్కారమెల్లను బోవునే రామచంద్రుని మనసునంతా రామచంద్రుని మనసునంతా ఆక్రమించెను కొలువు తీరా ఆక్రమించెను కొలువు తీరా కంటిరే కనుగొంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా కనుల కరువు తీరగా మన కర్మలెల్లన సింపగా కనుల కరువు తీరగా మన కర్మలెల్లన సింపగా కంటిరే కనుగొంటిరే మేహరి సుని కనుల కరువు తీరగా. अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय.
Jai Baba Pranita Meher. Now, a Hindi bhajan by Gopalakrishna Meher from Hyderabad.
मन स्थिर चंचल जब जब हो अपने आपे से बाहर हो मन अस्थिर चंचल जब जब हो अपने आपे से बाहर हो इस उलझन में एक सुलझ हो नाम मेहर का होठों पर हो समझ मना किसी उलझन में बहक जाना समझ मना किसी उलझन में बहक जाना गाओ रे मना मेहर मेहर नित ध्याओ रे मना गाओ रे मना मेहर मेहर नित ध्याओ रे मना गाओ रे मना सुख दुख एक समान मनाए, मेहर नाम ये जुगत सिखाए, समझ मना भूल कर कभी भी न आहे भरना, समझ मना भूल कर कभी भी न आहे भरना, गाओ रे मना मेहर मेहर नित जाओ रे मना। तन को वस्त्र सभी पहराए, बिना वस्त्र के मन रह जाए, तन को वस्त्र सभी पहराए, बिना वस्त्र के मन रह जाए, मेहर स्मरण का वस्त्र चढ़ाए, तो मन काहे मैला होए, समझ मना सुमिरन बिन कोई पल जाए ना, समझ मना सुमिरन बिन कोई पल जाए ना, गाओ रे मना मेहर मेहर नित जाओ रे मना। कहे प्रतापा इस मार्ग में, मिथ्याचार न हो जीवन में, कहे प्रतापा इस मार्ग में, मिथ्याचार न हो जीवन में, प्रेम ही प्रेम हो लेन देन में, मेहर प्रेम हो घर आंगन में, समझ मना प्रेम बिन प्रभु जी को कछु भाए ना, समझ मना प्रेम बिन प्रभु जी को कछु भाए ना, गाओ रे मना मेहर मेहर नित गाओ रे मना, गाओ रे मना मेहर मेहर नित गाओ रे मना, गाओ रे मना। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय।
Jai Baba. Now moving on to the next segment, that is today's special segment, remembering Baba's favorite Mast, Mohammad Mast. Over to you, brother Kalyan.
अवतार मेहर बाबा की జై. ప్రీతం బాబా ప్రసాదించిన నేటి అవకాశంలో యుఎస్ఏ నుంచి పీటర్ నార్డెన్ మరొకసారి ఈ సహవాస్ కార్యక్రమంలో పాల్గొంటున్నారండి. పీటర్ మరియు వారి జీవిత భాగస్వామి అయిన డెబీ నార్డీన్ మెహరాబాద్ లో కొన్ని దశాబ్దాలుగా వారి స్థిర నివాసాన్ని నివాసంగా చేసుకున్నారు. అయితే పీటర్ మెహరాజాద్ చరిత్రను మరియు ఎన్నో వివరాలను సేకరించి అధ్యయనం చేసి అందరితో పంచుకుంటూ వచ్చారు. అయితే 1970వ దశకం నుంచి మెహరాబాద్ లో ఉండడంతో అక్కడ నివసిస్తున్న బాబా ప్రియ మస్తుల్లో ఒకరైన మొహమ్మద్ సంబంధించి కొన్ని అనుభవాలను అలాగే కొన్ని వివరాలను సేకరించారు వారు. ఈ సందర్భంలో వాటిని మనతోటి పంచుకుంటారు. जय बाबा के दिए इस अवसर में पीटर नॉर्डीन जो कि यूएसए से हमारे साथ इस ऑनलाइन साहवास पर जुड़े हैं. पीटर मेहराजाद का चरित्र अध्ययन और अनुसंधान किया इन्होंने. 1970वीं 10वीं से मेहराबाद में रहते आए हैं इन्होंने. मोहम्मद मस्त जो कि बाबा के प्रिय मस्तों में से एक रहे हैं, इनके संबंधित कुछ विवरण और अनुभवों को पीटर ने समेकित किया. आज आइए बाबा के मोहम्मद को इनके द्वारा संस्मरण करते हैं. It is a pleasure to have Peter Nordeen from USA, a long-time Mehrabad resident and also a historian of Mehrabad and Mehrazad with us today. He has been in Mehrabad since 1970s and the opportunity of contact with Baba's Mandali and old-time Baba lovers, including Mohammad, one of Baba's favorite Masts. Let us remember Baba's Mohammad to Peter's sharing today. Hearty welcome and Jai Baba to you, Peter. Over to you for the next 60 minutes. Jai Baba.
A simple correction. I first came to Meherazad in 1974 after I turned 20 years old. And I've been visiting there since. Now, Baba's work with the God intoxicated is something quite novel for the sage. His work with the God intoxicated is the most intriguing and laborious phase of his work as avatar of the age, and it is a testament to his authority as the highest of the high, his responsibility for everyone and everything, and how he works on all planes of consciousness. This term must is something even new. It's something we have not heard of. For humanity, the depth of Baba's work with the God intoxicated and his explanations regarding that are new and revolutionary for humanity. From the very early years, occasionally Baba would contact these God-intoxicated persons who were peculiar to the Mandali at times, and he would begin explaining to them that this is not an ordinary person, they're advanced, and that's when the term must, it comes from the Sufi term mastala, and Baba shortened it to must. It's kind of a generic term. There are many descriptions of many types of them, but we use the generic term must. And this work went on through the years, but it really became more intense around 1936. He had, for an example, one Mast on the first plane, an ordinary Mast, wandered into Mehrabad during the 1920s and stayed there. He was named by Baba a Mastan. But the real intense work started before World War II. For the benefit of people who don't understand, aren't familiar, I would say, with Baba's explanations, let's just go back and do a little overview of exactly what a God-intoxicated person is. For most people, the goal in life is to become consciously one with God. For most souls, that is a simple experience of the infinite bliss of God. So there is not really spiritual advancement per se. It's just liberation. For some souls, spiritual advancement happens, and that will happen in one of three ways. Baba has explained. The first way is through effort. This is yoga. The individual makes efforts to advance spiritually, and often the motive is, I must advance. So the thought of I is always there. I will advance. I will make progress. The quickest method, Baba explains, is to become the true disciple of a perfect master, where there's no question of the spiritual path. There's only the issue of obedience to the perfect master without question. And that is the most expedient way to traverse the path, which is generally done, as Baba says, with the veil over the person's consciousness. The third thing that happens, though, is God intoxication. For some rare individuals, it is their destiny to go onto the path of God intoxication. What happens is, in their experience of coming to love God more and more, they become lost, intoxicated, and appear to be unbalanced in a worldly sense by this experience, because they're overwhelmed with the intoxication of this love. So what happens is they can also get stuck, and it is the responsibility ultimately of the perfect masters, the avatar, to bring them along. And he does that in his own ways. The avatar ages are the periods when they can make the most progress, because he can engage them in his universal work at whatever level he sees fit. Baba has explained that once a person is on the path of God intoxication, they don't go off of that. They won't become a yogi. They will be, since that intoxication just becomes more and more intense. Although consciousness changes as they progress in the planes, that is, the intoxication and the distraction is different, because the higher they progress, the more in tune with reality they truly are. So these are the persons that Baba was contacting through his life. In 1936, Baba had the ashram at Mehrabad, and he began the ashram in Nasik. He simultaneously began an ashram between Mehrabad and Nasik at Rahuri. And that ashram was specifically for mad, but most importantly, God mad. Now, the God mad are another category of persons. They are also spiritually advanced, but in the lower planes, and they become mentally unbalanced due to one of three reasons we won't get into, but they're referred to as God mad. They're not ordinary mad. Their madness is due to being unbalanced because of their either connection or drive for God. So this ashram in Rohuri was open, and Baba sent his disciples around to places to try and pick up these God-mad persons. He gave them a brief explanation about what type of persons they should be looking for. Now let's go to the first picture. Number 1. Okay. This Mast was not a God-mad person. So when Bleeder brought Mohammad, as he was known then, from Bombay to Rohuri, Baba immediately indicated, this is not a God-mad person. He's more advanced, so we keep him aside. There were a few Masts that were inadvertently brought, not knowing who they were. Of course, how could Mandali know what their state of advancement was? But Mohammad was essentially one of the first Masts who was ever purposely brought to Baba for his contact. His background is this. He was born in Ratnagiri. You know, Ratnagiri is just north of Goa on the coast there where they have a lot of mangoes, the big mango capital of Maharashtra. He grew up there. He was a potter. His name was Tukaram Chavan. He had a wife and 2 children, apparently. And as he explained it, one day as he was putting on his loincloth, wrapping it, it hit him. And he was stuck in that position for about 2 weeks. In that daze. In psychiatry, they would refer to that as a catatonic fit or catatonic spell. But what actually had happened is that, and this is typical with most Masts, at a certain point in their lives, usually as young adults, their past progress suddenly takes hold. And the experience of their playing has that effect on them. So he was brought to the Rohuri ashram by Bleeder from Bombay. When he was in Bombay, he said, he went to Bombay because he knew somehow that there were other, referred to as devas. There were other devas in Bombay, in that city. He didn't see any of them there and he didn't know what to do. So he wandered to Bombay. He lived on the streets, and he said, of course, eating was a problem. Staying alive was a problem. And although he was a Mast, he still had some awareness of his body that he had to keep it alive. So what happened is he was in a Muslim locality, and they knew that there are these Masts. And many of those people would gamble, so they would hang around Muhammad, give him food and tea, and hope for a hint on a number to play a daily lottery. And he would give them a number. As Erich explained, he might do this, and they would say, oh, that's 1. Or he might do this. He said, that's 3. But somehow they won. And so he became respected as somebody who had advancement and knowledge of this stuff. This is how he survived in Bombay. So when he came to Rohuri, he was there initially, and Bob explained that he is not a typical Mast. He's atypical. His traits were atypical. Let's go to the next image. So Mohammad said that it took him a few days to recognize who Dada, he referred to Baba as Dada. It took him a few days to recognize exactly who Dada was. But in the meantime, he became familiar with the routine of the ashram, which was that Baba wanted to make sure that the ashram inmates were given anything they desired. So he took full advantage of that. I want to read the description of Mohammad that Dr. William Duncan, one of Baba's Mandali, wrote about him when he opens his chapter of Mohammad. Like a problem child who needs the counsel of a psychiatrist to steer him to the highway of normal development, Mohammad was a problem must, entangled in the brambles of the spiritual path, and it was Baba who came to his rescue. So this happened over the course of months and years even. But during his initial time at the Huri ashram, he took full advantage of the fact that they had to give him anything he wanted to eat. So this is what Duncan describes as his diet. His daily intake at that time consisted of 12 bananas, 4 pounds of boiled beetroot, 4 ounces of pistachios, 2 large plates of rice and dal, 6 raw onions, 12 chapatis, 12 full plates of cooked vegetables, and 6 cups of tea in the morning and 6 cups of tea in the afternoon. So this went on, and he had these bad habits at that time. He would abuse people, spit on people who came too close to him. And this was his habit. So he had traits that Baba explained that there are certain traits of Masts. The 2 that we know that are described mostly, attributed mostly to the different Masts are Jamali, which is mild-natured, and Jalali, which is an excited temperament. And at this time, Muhammad was predominantly Jalali. So his habit was to abuse people in different ways. Gradually, and he would try and take full advantage of this thing that Baba said, give him whatever he wants. Bring me more blankets. He had more than enough. Take it away. He would go to the extent of telling Baidu, pull down the ashram. And Baidu would say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Then he would cry like a baby. Because remember that another trait of the Mast, as Duncan describes, a combination of man, child, and saint. Let's go to the third image. These are all photographs that were taken in the Huri ashram, the first 3. Then gradually, as I say, Muhammad came around to becoming more and more interested in what was happening, but specifically, he was always thrilled to be in Baba's presence. Let's go to the 4th image. Now, what happened is in 1937, because of issues with the landlord in Rahuri, Baba decided to close that ashram and move everything lock, stock, and barrel back to Hyderabad. So that happened in May, beginning end of April into May of 1937. So the Mad Ashram was reconstructed during those next few months. In that space you see between the Pilgrim Center and the engine room, as you leave the Pilgrim Center and walk up towards the Samadhi, you notice that you come up a little rise, and then there's a large level area. And to the north of that, off the ledge of it, is the men's cemetery. That large level area was where the Mad Ashram of Hyderabad was in 1937 and 38. Now, Muhammad, being a Mast, was not kept in the Mad Ashram. He was kept in quarters near the men mandali, near the old bungalow. which we use now as the Dharamshala. So this first image shows Mohammed. And during those days at the Mad Ashram, he would take full part in trying to help Dada in his work with these mad people, and became his standard abuse for years to come, that if he wanted to put somebody in their place, he called them mad. Mad means they're just mad. They're not really advanced. They're just mad. So most of us were all just mad. But he would be with Baba here. Let's go to the next image. First, before we go to, let's stay on number 4. I'm not seeing the full one, but I remember that you see the man on the left with the cap. That's Pleader. Pleader is that close disciple of that period who brought Muhammad to Baba in 1936. And Baidul is the one assisting Baba there. Muhammad has got that great smiling expression standing there in the Kafani while Baba is doing this work. And Muhammad would coach these God-mad people, telling them, Dada wants you to do this now. Go there, do that. He said, do this, because Baba was keeping silence. So Muhammad would be interpreting to the God-mad. So you had the disciples speaking and Muhammad interpreting to the God-mad in Marathi. They spoke Marathi, but he spoke God intoxication language, which apparently was more direct to them. So he would tell them what to do and helping Baba that way. That was his way to help. Next image. Number 5, you see there is Baba with Muhammad on his lap. This is Baidul standing behind. This is still the Mad Ashram at Mehrabad. Baba explained that Muhammad was caught between the 3rd and the 4th plane, which is that condition is something that the solid pilgrim experiences, but usually not the God intoxicated. This is one of the traits Baba said that made Muhammad the Mast an unusual type, irregular type of Mast. That Hayrat, as the Sufis say, is something that happens to the Salik pilgrim. Salik pilgrims are the yogis or the God absorbed, but not God intoxicated. What Baba did in these years for Muhammad was free him from that condition by this point and raise him to, according to Duncan, a level between the 4th and the 5th plane. And eventually he was raised to be stationed completely on the 5th plane, where Baba said he would stay for the rest of this lifetime. Number 6. This photograph is a very nice one. Baba rolling up his sleeves and tucking up his pants with Muhammad ready to work with the Masts. This is Masaji standing behind. And this is still the Mad Ashram at Mehrabad. Number 7 is another nice shot of Baba with Muhammad. Now this is before Baba started the more intense seclusions with working with the Masts, but Muhammad being one of the original advanced Masts one of Baba's favorites because of his eccentric traits. He was useful in certain types of seclusion work too. So occasionally, Baba, for his seclusion with Mast, would use the Mast who had just the right fit for the specific work he needed to do. So that's why we see him using certain Masts at certain times. This is beyond the work he did specifically, individually for each God-intoxicated person. Now, we're talking about his general universal work. Let's go to number 8. This is a nice shot of Baba traveling somewhere in India, standing next to Mohammad. In 1937, later, you'll recall that Baba, with many of the Mandali, made a trip to France. This was all about preparation for the war to come. He spent more time that year in southern France than anywhere else in the Western world during his lifetime. After he was there and had been settled, he had Arti and Baidul bring Mohammad to France. And there was a specific purpose for this. Which comes in later, but we should say that Baba explained, that is, that Mohammad represented Germany during World War II. And it's interesting that he brought Mohammad to France before Germany invaded France. The trip to get Mohammad to France was a very difficult one. So this is how the Mandali came to know how to deal with these persons. Now here's Mohammad Mast with his peculiar characteristics. They had to get him a passport and a visa, and he had to behave himself at least through those processes. They were lucky to get that done. They got him on board the ship somehow. People noticed that there was this peculiar character with these two Iranian. So the ship surgeon went to him and said, we have to put him in quarantine and medical. He can't, what is this issue with this person? And Arti, being a strong personality, said, I take full responsibility of his behavior. He must stay in here with us. The explanation was he's going for special treatment in Europe. But all along the way, he had his particular habits of, for example, as he would say, picking dish, which means he would bend over and pick things up off the ground and gaze, look at the ground, and be lost in that gazing at things. So what was on the ship deck? Cigarette butts, matches, any little piece of litter or whatever. And he would be busy with that. Of course, time was no issue with him, but at a certain time, then the Mandali would have to get him to move. So they would finally coax him to move, but he would throw a tantrum and throw this trash somewhere, and it would sometimes land on one of the other passengers. Difficult time. He also had the habit of barricading himself in one of the toilets or bathrooms. They couldn't get him to move. He'd be in there for hours. This is one of his traits. He would be gazing. And he would say, or they would, if they asked him what he was doing, he would say, "Me bagto." That was his. I'm looking. And when they couldn't get him to move, Arti realized the only thing they could do is appeal to his innocent childlike side. So they would say, "No, the police are coming. The police are coming. They're going to arrest us because you're not moving." And that would snap him out of it. And that little lingering cultural fear that was left, the police, okay, that would be enough to shock him into moving. So this is a ploy they had to use on this trip there, and even more so back to India when Mohammad was taken to France. So when they were in France, Baba had a garage set up there on the ground level in the same manner of these bathing spaces that he would use to work with the god mad and the god intoxicated. Remember, he would shave them, bathe them, even clean the latrines at the Mad ashram. Baba personally did all that work. It was his work, and he personally attended to all that work. So whatever he was doing for all of these people, it was monumental. There's a story once, Mercedes da Costa was a follower of Baba's, but she was also caught in the world. She was a Hollywood screenwriter. She was there in France, in Cannes, when Baba was there. And one day she took Baba and Mohammad for a ride in her convertible car. And Mohammad was in the back doing something like this. And they came to a place, and a policeman stopped her. And asked, what's going on here? Who's this man behaving like a lunatic? And she said, yes, officer, these are my friends who have come from abroad, from India. And Bob is going, this gentleman is a mute. And the other gentleman has come especially to France here to see a psychiatric expert. And so the policeman waved them on. So they went back to France, back to India after France in November. Mohammed was taken back. They went on the Blue Bus tours. Let's go to the next image, number 9. This is a photograph of Baba working in the Bangalore ashram. Bangalore, now we call it Bengaluru, was where Baba had the largest Mast ashram of the numbers of Mast ashrams he had, and it was for a long period. In other words, more than 6 months. Don't have to tell you, probably more Masts were contacted by Meher Baba in Hyderabad than any other place in India. There was a good concentration of them there. But before Bangalore, let's go to the next image, number 10. Baba traveled on the Blue Bus tours beginning in December 1938. Mohammed was not on the Blue Bus. No, that wasn't going to happen, but he was taken by certain of the Mandali to certain places, specifically Jabalpur, Ajmer. He was in those places with Baba early in 1939. Now, this is before Bangalore. And then again, after Bangalore, he was taken to specific places. So he traveled a lot, and Baba would work with him. And we always say Baba would work with somebody. Baba generally worked with these spiritually advanced persons. If it was a Mast or a spiritually advanced saint or whatever, generally what he would do on a gross level was bow down to them repeatedly. He might wash their feet, he might bathe them and shave them. And that generally the bathing and shaving was done with the god mat and the Mast, and it was when that kind of activity was specifically for their individual advancement. When it came to seclusion work, it was for engaging the Masts in his specific work, his universal work. This work became more intense as the war became closer and closer. And Baba began, one of the reasons for the Blue Bus tours was to contact Masts all over India. It probably was the most important reason. Baba gave 3 or 4 reasons for their traveling on the blue bus. But contacting Masts was one of the very important reasons all around India. And he would, as I said, engage these people in his work at the time. There are many stories, fascinating stories about Baba's contact with the Masts. And during World War II, when there were travel restrictions because of fuel and security all over India, Erich explained to us, and that was the time when Baba was most intent on traveling to contact Masts. And he said a standard banner they would see in the train stations all over India was, "Travel only if you must." What? We're on number 10? Okay. That's a beautiful photograph of Baba, number 10 there, with Mohammad. One of my favorites. Let's go, okay, leave it there for a minute. I'll just, after Bangalore, Baba closed that ashram and brought everybody back to Mehrabad. This was now May 1940. And he was planning an intense seclusion in 1940, and it was also that period where he gave 200 and some people, his close disciples, specific orders to follow for 1 year. There was a list of 30-some directives, and each individual was given specific numbers to follow. Even little children, who were the children of his Mandali, were given their individual lists of directives during that period. Baba went back to Mehrabad and established the Mast ashram at Mehrabad now in what had been the maternity hospital, originally built as a maternity hospital in 1938, at the top of the hill, which we see north of the Samadhi when we go to Mehrabad. Now it is very important because it is the only remaining site of a Mast ashram intact where Baba did work. And it's right there at Mehrabad, so we can see it right there. This went through a few stages of additional development during the next few years, but since 1941, there hasn't been much at all done to it, except there has recently been an improvement in paving to allow access to the building and to secure the foundation from moisture infiltration. So great care is being taken to keep that as it was in the most important period of Baba's work there, which was the seclusions during the war and as the site of the Mehrabad Mast ashram. Now, when Baba was in a Mast ashram, he would take care of the Mast as he always had. They should be given anything they wanted. So at the Bangalore ashram, they had opened what they called a Mast hotel. Erich was in charge of the Mast ashram in Bangalore. As a new young disciple there, he was taking care of the Masts. And he told us the story once. Baba had asked him, "How's it going with the Masts?" He said, "It's going all right, Baba, but I wake them up at 2 a.m. for their bath, like you say, and they grumble a lot to be waking up so early." Baba said, "Well, you have to show them that it's day." "What do you mean, show them that it's day?" "You light those bright lamps, put them around, and you wake them up. And then they'll think it's day, and Erich did that, and it worked, which was an amazing thing. It also shows their innocent, childlike nature, that if he would light a couple of bright lamps, they would think it was day. This is how they learned to work with the Mast by Baba's direction. So this Mast ashram was transferred to Mehrabad. There were only 4 or 5 Masts that were kept up there, but they were also integrated into the next phase of seclusion. The most important must during that seclusion was Karim Baba, who was brought from Calcutta, first to Ranchi in July and then to Mehrabad. He was named Karim because he didn't have a name. Many of these musts don't have names. They're too lost in their state. But they named him Karim Baba because he reminded them of an early disciple, Karim, by his looks. He was also known as the Tiger Must because he was a bit Jalali and he had long fingernails which were like tiger claws. The cage room was built specifically to hold this Tiger Must in seclusion during that year, 1940, beginning August 1st, where he was kept for a week or so. The intense part of that seclusion was early in August. The month went by. Gradually after August, Baba lessened the intensity of that seclusion on the hill. Then he had Pendu come in on specific days. He would go to meet the women one afternoon a week. And while he spent time with them, he would send Pendu in to do those additions that he wanted onto the mustache from there on the hill. Sometime as Bob was lessening the seclusion, but still, it was a very strict seclusion. Only Vishnu was supposed to see Baba. Krishna Nair was an attendant at the gate and would keep things clean around Baba, but he still would not see Baba. Here's a story that happened. Mohammad was there on the hill. There were some other musts too. I believe it was September 1940. Mohammad, it seemed, had suddenly remembered that he had a wife. And he started asking Baba, I want to see my wife. And Baba would put him off by saying, yes, she's being called. This went on for a few weeks because Baba couldn't possibly do that. He was doing his seclusion work, and Mohammad was part of that. And suddenly one day, Mohammad was really hurt and crying. What was the issue? Now, Bidal was in there. Bidal was allowed to be in there, but he was also on silence if he was taking care of the musts. He wasn't allowed to speak, except if Baba told him to. But this issue with Mohammad then happened. What's the problem, Baba? I never expected you to lie to me. He caught on that Baba was just putting him off, that he was going to bring his wife. Vishnu, who would see Baba a few minutes per day for correspondence or messages and communication with the other Mandali, Baba said, we're in a fix. Mohammed's realized I'm putting him off. Now what to do? We have to devise a plan. So Baba said, this is what we do. You find one of the old women from the village, and you bring her here with a hungry child whining. She should hold that child in her arms, and nobody should see me. You put a bandage over her eyes, like that, and you rehearse these few lines with her. So there were some lines rehearsed. She caught on. She got the gist of it. So then soon, Mohammad, your wife has been brought. Oh, so they brought her into the compound. Now she's blindfolded with this thing on her, over her eye, the bandage. And she comes in with this whining, crying baby squirming in her arms. And kind of starts by nagging him a little bit. And his first reaction was, oh, you've grown so old. And she said, we're hungry, and baby needs this, and my eyes aren't well. I'm need some medicine? And Muhammad said, no, you put, and he told her what to put on her eyes. You should put this on on your eyes. And somehow this went back and forth. Vishnu was there. Baba was there standing by, enjoying the show. And she ad-libbed a few lines, went along with it. But by the time it was over, Muhammad was relieved that he didn't have to deal with his wife anymore. So we know this story because Baba visited the women and told the story to them. So he enjoyed that drama. Let's see, we are at number 11. We should be at number 11. This is a picture of, let's see. Yes, that was that story that went along with that. Now, Muhammad was sent away in October of that year to stay with Ali Akbar at that time in Bombay, back in Bombay. Alaba kept him there for about 6 months at his apartment in Bombay, which was simple. It also had a communal toilet and bathroom facility that Muhammad would use and do the same thing, going in there, locking the door so nobody else could use the place. And hours would go on and Alaba would be having to go to work. And there was Muhammad, he had to take care of him. And he'd be locked in the bathroom and what to do. And this went on and on. He would report right back to Baba, please relieve me of this. It's impossible to take care of him here. He's like this, he's like that. Okay. What happened is, around April of that year, the following year, now 1941, Muhammad was sent back to Ratnagiri, where he stayed for some months. Don't know the story, if he was reunited with his family there, what happened, but he was in Ratnagiri for, at least he must have been being cared for by some people who knew him, we assume. Baba would never put any of these musts back in their original location unless they were cared for. Now, if the must on their own wandered away and put people off, there was nothing he could do about it. But as far as possible, Baba always tried to accommodate the comforts of a must wherever they were, whomever he contacted. So Muhammad was there for some time. Now let's go to number 12. Until January 1942. He was taken back to Mehrabad for a visit in January, and a few days later, he was brought back to Mehrabad to live there permanently. And he did reside back in the Mast ashram on the hill for a short while. And then eventually he ended up there where you see him in the old Dharamshala, the old bungalow, I would say, not Dharamshala, the old bungalow at Lower Mehrabad. Here he is on the east veranda, and you see him he very systematically sitting in the center of one square of Shahabad flooring, and the other side is very carefully placed a couple of cups. He was very systematic about things. It was part of his nature of working. In the Louis Van Gasteren film from 1967, there's that good segment that shows him working with that cannonball on his pot. So this might be, psychologists or psychiatrists might look at this and see this as obsessive compulsive disorder. But these, for him, were mediums in the gross world of whatever he was doing on his plane of consciousness. Muhammad stayed on the hill. There are stories, once he became fascinated with the peacock Moti, who was one of the pets on the hill, and Margaret Krask was taking care of him. And one day Baba came to her and said, bring Moti. So she brought the peacock. She was out taking him for a walk at the time, and she brought him. And Baba said, hand him over to Mohammad. So she gave the peacock to Mohammad, who walked away happily with the peacock. Baba knew he would be fascinated with this bird for a little while. And sure enough, the next day or so, he returned the peacock to the women. But he wanted to see this, gaze at the peacock for a while. Let's go to the next image. Number 13. This is Muhammad with the Mast Ali Shah, who is nicknamed Babji, who also came to stay as a permanent resident at Mehrabad for the remainder of his life from 1944. He was also one of Baba's favorites. And the great quality of the Mast Ali Shah was that he was willing to do seclusion work for Baba wherever and whenever he was needed. He was described by Baba as being pure Jamali type, means mild-mannered nature. The two of them, however, didn't get along so well. You can see this picture kind of captures especially Muhammad's attitude. The two of them sitting on this bed. It captures both the personalities. Muhammad disgusted with this other person, and Ali Shah, pure Jamali, smoking 2 or 3 cigarettes at the same time. And the close disciple of Baba from Arangan, Sidhu, was given the general charge of taking care of these two musts through the years. He became very good at it. He knew how to deal with the temperaments. During the new life, it was Sidhu's responsibility to stay there at Mehrabad and see to the comfort of the two musts. That was his sole responsibility. Muhammad became very familiar with all the inmates of the Mehrabad ashram. He knew all the Mandali and all the people who worked there. He would direct them, ask them if they were going for their lunch or whatever. And, he was engaged with the ashram. Let's go to the next image, number 14. This is Baba with Muhammad in about 1954, probably around the 3 Incredible Weeks time, because we see Baba with all these garlands. Now, Baba was busy with particular work at Mehrabad, such as at any of the Sahavas programs. He would try and avoid Muhammad, because Muhammad would catch on to him, like you see here, and want just Baba to stay with him and be there with him and grab him and hang on. So Baba had to carefully extricate himself from Muhammad's grip and try and get back to everything else. So often Baba would tell the Mandali, don't tell him I'm here. If he catches me, the schedule is all off. So this is his nature was like that. He would do his gazing work, his work. Many of the residents around Mehrabad had experiences with him, interaction, funny things. Sheila Kalchuri Fenster writes very nicely about her experiences with Muhammad as a little girl living at Mehrabad. And he really paid attention to her and had her do specific things, would take her shoes or, take something. And Padre used to laugh about that, about Muhammad taking something from people. How he would very cleverly, as Padre would put it, very cleverly lift some item from you. What's in your pocket? But he wouldn't take money. He was after things like, shoes or a handkerchief. He He liked handkerchiefs. Later on, he became more engrossed in bars of soap in the future years. On January 31st, as Padre was going to Marazad in the morning, Mohammad asked him where he was going. The Padre said, I'm going to Pimplegang. He says, why? Dada's coming here today. Dada's going to come here to stay today. Padre couldn't make sense of what he was saying, and that was the day Mohammad dropped his body. And it was so difficult for everybody who had the association with Baba's physical form. Those days for the Mandali were very difficult. Baba's family specifically, it was very difficult for them. But it wasn't difficult for Mohammad. Sheila writes that when they went to see Mohammad during that period of interment, he would say, why are you unhappy? Dada's right here. One of the things Mohammad told Padre that day is, why Dada's coming here? He's coming here to be like Gustaji. And remember, Baba said Gustaji got realization and dropped his body in 1957. And he was buried at Mehrabad. His body was buried there. So Mohammad made that comment. He's coming to be here like Gustaji. It was a very puzzling remark to Padre at the time, till later in the day he realized. But this is a fascinating thing. So Mohammad would say, why are you unhappy? Dada's here. He's right here. And he's there. He's in front of me here. So this is an interesting observation. Baba dropped his body, yet from the fifth plane, he's still there. All we can say is that he dropped his gross body. And this is one of the reasons why Bao has stated that we can only say Baba dropped his physical body, but he said he would otherwise be alive until he was 90. He may have retained at least his mental body until that point. We don't know. We can't say. We can only say that Muhammad's observation from the fifth plane was that Baba was still there. Let's go to the next image, number 15. Now this is, when Sheila says, when they went to Muhammad, she and Duncan, they asked him if he wanted to go up the hill to see Baba's body. And that's why he said, why? He's here with me. He's here now. I don't need to, why should I go there? He's here. He was very happy during that period. But on the last day of his own volition, he said, now I should go. And he came on that last day before Baba's body was covered. And this is a photograph taken of Sidhu bringing Muhammad to see Baba's body there. And Sheila tells us that there was that pile of earth on the side. It was placed where Mara's grave is now. That was reserved to put into Baba's, over Baba's body once the cover was put there. And she didn't want anybody to walk on it, so she was keeping guard there. And she was very sad and weepy. And Muhammad came to her and said, why are you crying? Don't cry now. And he took her by the hand and they circumambulated, walked around the pile of earth and also around the tomb. For whatever reason, he did that. He went inside, but he was seeing Baba everywhere. This is a great photograph to show us his mood during that period of interment. It was a release of Baba's work, and he experienced it. Number 16. This is a beautiful photograph taken by Sam Irwin. You see Mohammad sitting here. His room, by the way, was the room where Alan Wagner stayed for years after. It was originally an enclosed veranda. During 1925, that room was enclosed to create a surgery room at Mayher Charitable Hospital and Dispensary. So this is where Mohammad ended up staying for so many years. In 1969, he was still there at that room when all the visitors from the great Darshan came to Mehrabad to tour. Behind him is, on the top, Baba's nephew Rustam, and then Rayaman Dada Chanji. A beautiful expression on Muhammad's face. Very soon after that, he was shifted from that room to the main bungalow, the Mandali Hall in the main bungalow. If we go to the next image, number 17, you will see him sitting on his bed there in that corner, that southeast corner of the Mandali Hall in the main bungalow. And during the 1970s and 80s, this is where we would always see him, often see him, when we visited Mehrabad. That room was like the reception center of Mehrabad during those days before the Pilgrim Center was constructed. All the photographs and charts that Baba had asked Padre to display on the walls were there. And here we came, all of us, we had a real live must to see, one of Baba's favorites. And it was really a remarkable thing when we look back on it that Baba gave us all the gift of his company. On one of the first days I was there in 1974, I was wandering around this hall, looking at all these things that were on the wall. He was sitting on his bed right there quietly. And Minu Barucha walked through the room and he said something to Minu. And Minu turned to me and said, "You're a carpenter?" I said, "Yes." "How did he told you that?" And Minu said, "Yes, he knows everything." He just walked away through the You can see these urinals lined up systematically like cannons facing the east. So this is another indication of how Muhammad would work with these specific objects through the years. When I became a resident at Mehrabad a few years later, I was going through a pile of lumber in the go-down, and a scorpion stung my hand. So I went out and around the front of Padre's room to get a remedy for scorpion sting. Just at that time, somebody called me into the hall, said, "Mohammad wants you," before Padre could even give me the remedy. I didn't associate with Muhammad often. Not just as a regular person. Of the residents who associated more with Muhammad, of course, Sidhu died in 1975. So Sidhu was still there in 74, but after Sidhu died, there were a couple of the Arangan servants who would take care of Muhammad. Then Eric and Heather came to stay at Mehrabad in 1976. Erico's primary responsibility was to serve as the watchman on the hill because the old one had also died. But they lived in the room next to Muhammad there, where Muhammad is sitting. They lived on the other side of the wall. So they became familiar. Of course, Heather was studying Marathi, Eric was studying Hindi, and they together learned enough of the language to communicate with Muhammad. And gradually, Erico became the attendant of Muhammad This is now getting later in the 70s. There were other people also involved. But primarily it was Erica who became Muhammad's attendant towards the end of his life. So anyway, I was stung by the scorpion. Muhammad called me to him. At that time, he was interested in pishwees, bags with soap. And he would sort some of these bars of soap into different bags, and that would be the thing. And he wanted me to hold up his particular bag of soap up in the air and stand in front of him. So I held it up with the arm that wasn't stung. Noko noko dusra tatlo. So I had to put it in the other hand that was stung and stand there. And Padre knew what was happening, and he came in and laughed and just gave me the remedy while I was standing there. And I stood there while the scorpion sting took effect into this arm. But I realized it was as if Muhammad, he didn't want to miss the opportunity of working with some good pain. So he had me hold up that bag. More than that, people around him knew he would work for us. He wouldn't explain it, but obviously he must have been doing something. I can't say what it was, but that happened. Interesting, as if he couldn't miss the opportunity of getting in on some good pain. He did suffer. Let's go to the next image. That's a nice photograph of Muhammad. In 1973, for an example, he lost his mood sometime in June and stopped eating. He would also stop sleeping and sometimes even drinking. And with difficulty, Padre would coax him to even drink water in some days. It was just, he would be so lost in his work, whatever that was, that it would go on and on. That specific time, he didn't eat for 9 months. Finally, Padre could persuade him to drink a cup of milk towards the last 6 weeks. But whatever it was, and it looked, when he would go through these things, it looked like he was going to die, but he didn't. He was there. He went through illnesses and different things. We saw so many things. He would get into this mood and he might, for an example, stand and hold a door for days, staring at it like that. What was he doing? We had no idea. And people would try to coax him. Rest, eat something, but he would be lost in his work. And he would say, his standard line was, he would get short. No, to the next subject. Yeah. You don't understand, go away. In 1979, he was bitten by a mad dog while he had this habit of going to the tap and running the water and gazing at it. And Padre was always laboring with this water shortage at Hyderabad. And here Mohammed would run the tap and he'd shout at him and, yeah, I'm coming, I'm looking, I'm coming. And he would run. So Padre had to put a restrictor on that flow. So even if there was just a little dribble at that tap, that was Mohammed's tap, at least he could still look at the water running, but they weren't wasting so much water. He was doing that one day and a mad dog wandered by and bit his leg. And of course, there was 2 severe lacerations on his leg. And of course, you can't stitch that wound. So Padre very carefully, several times a day, changed that dressing and treated him with calendula tincture, just keeping the wound clean. Gradually, took weeks, but that wound healed without infection. No antibiotics, nothing like that. Padre was strictly old-fashioned, natural, and he took care of Muhammad's wounds. But it was a severe thing. Muhammad had to also then take the rabies shots, though, and at the time it was 21 injections to his abdomen, which he didn't like, but he had to take those 21 injections. And he got very sick after that also and stopped eating again for some period. One day, Padre and I were walking through the hall, and there was Muhammad flat on the floor. And we rushed over to him. I picked him up, put him on his bed. He was pale. He had a dark complexion, but he was pale. The blood in his pallor was just... When he was in these periods of intense work, he had a look on his face sometimes, I would say, of hopeless despair. And Baba has described the condition of saints sometimes as being divine nightmare. And it seemed like that. He suffered. But Baba had said that Muhammad the Mast would become a perfect master after 2 or 3 lifetimes. And the thing about perfect masters is they have the capacity to suffer and serve. It's a rare characteristic for a soul. It's not for every soul can't have that destiny. Only rare souls have the destiny of becoming a Sadguru. Number 19, this is Muhammad's typical position on the back veranda, the east veranda of Mehrabad during those later years, covered with his blanket in colder weather, sitting there on his chair. There are other stories. I'm running out of time, though, so I'm not going to go into all of these things. Number 20, you see that photograph taken by Bob Street, really beautiful, captures Muhammad's look in those later years. And as I told you, he would go through these periods of illness. And so much so that the medical people were convinced he was going to die the next day. I mean, this didn't happen once or twice. This happened repeatedly. I was at Marazad once when Dr. Ann sent a note to Erich, which was read out to him. We were standing there in the open and it was read out to him. Muhammad is now, seems to be breathing his last. He's breathing what we call the death wheeze. Hardly breathing. Every few seconds, he could take a breath. And Anne wrote, it seems for sure that by morning he'll drop his body. So we're making preparations just to inform you. And Eric says, yeah, all right. And of course, he didn't die. 2 of us interns would be put on watch with him around the clock, and he would go through these periods. And I remember after one difficult night, the next morning, a number of us are sitting with him. He's sitting on his chair, drinking water from his favorite pink plastic glass, looking around at us and just laughing, saying, you people don't understand. But eventually he did get old. Padre and Pendu always thought that he was about their age. They were both born in 1903. So he did ultimately drop his body on June 17th, 2003. You see the next image. Now that is the gravesite in the men's cemetery. The 2 special graves there are those of Bapchi and Mohammad, Baba's two favorite musts that spent the rest of their lives at Mehrabad. And the last, number 22, is the plaque, which simply says Mohammad Mast and the date of his death. It was a great privilege to have a must, a real live must with us all those years at Mehrabad. And he was, I would say, very considerate human being. Though he had his must nature and his must work, and sometimes he was irritated that even our physical body that carried our mind into his presence would be there and irritate him. And he would shout at people when he wasn't in the mood to go away. Standard line. Still, we saw that he was a considerate human being overall. Just one example of Baba's great work with these God-intoxicated people. All these images came courtesy of Meher Nazir Photos and others. But that is the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very detailed account indeed. There were a few questions that are coming up from the Baba family on this Sahavas on YouTube. I think we just time for two of those.
Certainly, as many as you like. It's your schedule. As many as you like.
Thank you so much, Peter. The first question is, was Muhammad's wife ever brought to see him? You know, you told us the episode of the inaction, the drama that was arranged, but was his wife ever brought to
his real wife never came, and I'm assuming that she probably married somebody else in the meantime or had nothing to do with him. They assumed that he went mad and wandered away. So he spent some years in Bombay. You know, he was picked up there in 1936. So if he became a must at a young age, he may have spent as many as 10 years or so in Bombay before he was taken to Baba. So in that time, his wife either probably married someone else or just cut ties with him and went on with her life. It's not their fault. They didn't understand what had happened to him. It's not easy for people, mostly, who don't have a spiritual inclination to understand that this can happen.
Yes. Okay. We'll move on to the next question. The question is about which country was Muhammad Mast in charge of? So you mentioned about World War II. Yeah, please go ahead.
So Baba said he represented Germany, and Chatti Baba, one of Baba's favorites and really the most important must during the years 41, 42, actually, let me think, 40, 41. He represented France. We have all those great stories of him being at Mehrabad, being in seclusion with Baba, and him going through all of these things, him being in Sri Lanka with Baba in 1940. He was contacted during the Bangalore years, and then he finally, at one point, Baba had to try and pacify Chatti Baba and he changed to change the venue to Panchgani, change the environment and try and get a few more days, weeks out of work with Chatti Baba. It went on, but Chatti Baba's mood was so ruined by that point. He was just totally restless. And the last day, he just walked away and wept. And Bob would have somebody pick him up in a car and then bring him back. And this went on. And finally he was exasperated. He said, please, I have to go. I'm exhausted. I just can't do this anymore. It's a must of the sixth plane. A great must. Ruler of his plane. So what is the caliber of Baba's work then that this must is saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I have to go. And Baba let him go. And the Mandali at the time said they never saw such a sad look on Baba's face as that day when Chakti Baba left. But, yes. So Mohammad represented Germany. He was brought to France. Chakti Baba represented France. And while France was attacked, he had extreme reactions that was observed at Mehrabad.
Okay, did Baba say anything about Muhammad's past incarnation as some king in France? And
well, I've heard rumors of that, but it's not written. The Mandali never talked much about these things, but it could be. I mean, many of the Mandali, Baba had said that they were such and such, so and so in past lives. They played roles in the formation of the modern world that was preparing for the Avataric Advent, because they had past connections and future connections with him. So Mohammed would have been one more personality with a connection. And I can't say that's not true. All I can say is that on my level, it is hearsay. I didn't hear that specific. I remember hearing it from time to time, but I won't say that, yes, so-and-so said Baba said. Like we can say with Vishnu being Napoleon or Khorshid being Queen Victoria. Mohammed may have been one of the King Louis of France. There was a saintly king there.
Peter, could you please narrate the incident of Muhammad singing the night before
Yes.
Padri went to Baba?
I just mentioned that to you yesterday, that when Padri died, the night Padri died, Muhammad locked the doors to that hall from the inside and spent the night singing. And Win Coates recorded much of it. It was really otherworldly, his singing that night. It was really something. And Padri's body was kept in the Rory cabin. Muhammad was locked in the hall. That recording is, I hope, still intact somewhere. Hopefully one day we find it.
Thank you so much, Peter.
thank you, Peter. Very detailed account indeed on behalf of the Baba family. Hearty Jai Baba. We'll move on with the next segments in the program. Thank you again. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, my pleasure. Thank you.
We will now have a collection of video footages of Muhammad Mast, Baba's one of Baba's favorite Masts. We have a video footage collection being played. Jai Baba andi. Peter Nordeen చాలా విపులంగా మహమ్మద్ మస్త్ గురించి, అలాగే బాబా చేసిన మస్తి కార్యక్రమం గురించి చెప్పడం జరిగింది ఇక్కడ. అయితే సమయాభావం వల్ల అన్ని వివరాలు చెప్పుకోవడానికి వీలు లేదు ఇక్కడ. ఇప్పుడు మనకు అందుబాటులో ఉన్న వీడియో కలెక్షన్, వీడియో ఫిల్మ్, కొన్ని మహమ్మద్ మస్ట్ కి సంబంధించిన కొన్ని వీడియో ఫుటేజెస్ మనకు అందుబాటులో ఉన్నాయండి. వాటిని చూద్దాం. జై బాబా.
Truly rich, who, owning nothing, possesses the priceless treasure of his love for God, his poverty that kings could envy, and that makes even the King of Kings his slave.
So many times I have thought about you.
It is not given to everybody to be a lover of God. Such lovers are so consumed in the fire of love that they are not conscious of their stage of spiritual progress. Advanced aspirants not only participate in some of the privileges of the divine state, but also wield great powers. Mohammed is always going out to find something on which to fix his gaze. They do not see in these their external form or appearance. They see God's divinity in these. He would call Baba Dada. He would say, Dada is God. Dada is Master. Everything depends on Dada's will. Dada is the Master of mercy.
Jai Baba. Now, beloved Baba's film, Baba's Work with Masts, an extract from the film The Human Side of God.
After several lives of search, purification, service, and self-sacrifice, a soul has the good fortune to meet and get connected with a God-realized Master. With every advent of the Avatar on Earth, the 12 men of the Inner Circle gather around the personality of the Avatar. I and those who accompany me on a must trip keep moving night and day for weeks at a time, without regular meals, and only rarely do we rest for a night. I love these lovers of God. They are so blissfully indifferent to their bodily needs. The Masts are God-intoxicated souls. They see me and know me as none of you do. When the internal eye is opened, God, who is the object of search and longing, is actually sighted. Masts and saints of the higher planes are completely desireless and immersed in the joy of God intoxication. Since their only concern is God, they become recipients of the unique happiness which is characteristic of the God state. Owing to the exuberance of the uncontrollable joy in their inward contact with the Divine Beloved, they are utterly heedless of worldly standards or values. The Mast Azim Baba said, "You are Allah. You brought forth the creation, and once in 1,000 years, you come down to see the play of what you have created." I am the mother of the Masts. If God were not there, there would be no Masts. They are also like parts of my body. Some are nose, ears, and eyes for me. I am helpful to them, and they are helpful to me. The Masts alone know how they love me, and I alone know how I love them. I work for the Masts, and knowingly or unknowingly, they work for me. They are unattached to everything except God, and remain unaffected by the pleasures and pains to which worldly persons are subject. They are happy because they are always face to face with the Divine Beloved, who is the very source of happiness.
If I were to go to the deepest, darkest place, or rise to the splendors of paradise, if I had powers to make dreams come true, it would all be empty without you.
They are no ordinary mortals, but true lovers of God, who have lost themselves in His love and attained the state of saints.
It is told you are old, anciently for time. Yet it's true that none is any younger than you. Birthless and endless through the endless air, hidden behind your veil of mystery.
Through unfathomable ways I lead you to liberation. My continuous experience is that I am in everyone and everything. With a child, I am a child. With the highest saints, I am one with them. It is my nature to be absolutely natural, even with beloved God, who is one with me, and I with Him. I am the Lord of love and the slave of those who really love me. The state of this perfect lover of God is indescribable. Their hearts directly experience the inner truths beyond the gross sphere. The lover's union with the beloved is beyond the realm of understanding. They have no beloved except God, and they have no longing except for God. An initiate pilgrim upon meeting Baba cried, "Here no one knows you. I have seen you and recognized you as the true avatar of Vishnu. Pray you remember me also." The saints are like the nerves of my body. They work for me and I guide their lives. My present avataric form is the last incarnation of this cycle of time. Hence my manifestation will be the greatest. When I break my silence, the impact of my love will be universal, and all life in creation will know, feel, and receive of it. These are my dear children. Circumstances do not affect him. People call him mad and may make him suffer untold hardship. But his life's desire is to see God. I veil myself from man by his own curtain of ignorance and manifest my glory to a few. Brahmananji Mast said, "Behold how devoted love draws the Lord Krishna to me." He doesn't wear anything. He doesn't beg for food or anything. He doesn't ask for anything. He doesn't want anything. Even if you want to give him something, he won't take it. My love for the Masts is similar in many ways to that shown by a mother who continues to look lovingly after her children, regardless of their behavior. Rarely do we rest for a night. See that a Mast is amiable for contact. Avoid any action that might upset him. You will both have to use your own resources.
జై బాబా కార్యక్రమంలో తదుపరి అంశం నామ్ ధున్. Now we will listen to Naam Dhun in Sister Mani's voice, the 7 names of God prayer, which was given by Baba for the Premashram boys on 16th June 1927. మనం సోదరి మనీజా యొక్క గానంలో భగవంతుడి యొక్క 7 నామాలు అనేటటువంటి ప్రేయర్ని వింటాం. బాబా 1927 జూన్ 16వ తారీఖున ప్రేమాశ్రమంలో ఉన్నటువంటి పిల్లలందరికీ భగవంతుడి యొక్క ఈ 7 నామాలు అనేటటువంటి ప్రార్థనలు ఇచ్చారు.
Hari Paramatma. This was later when Baba had us repeat these names of God in song. That's what you're singing. Hari Paramatma Allah. No, I'm getting wrong. Put that off. Par Parvar Degarahura Mast Allahu Tu hi azar दान तु ही भगवान हुरा मस्त अल्लाहु तु ही अज़र दान तु ही भगवान हुरा मस्त अल्लाहु तु ही पर मात्मा परब्रह्म तु ही all mighty God ईश्वर तु ही परमात्मा परब्रह्म तु ही all mighty God ईश्वर. I knew that was going to happen. Could we start again?
Yes, sir.
Tu nirakar parvardigar ahura mast Allahu tu hi azam दान तु ही भगवान ahura मस्त अल्लाहु तु ही अज़र दान तु ही भगवान अहूरा मस्त अल्लाहु तु ही परमात्मा परब्रह्म तु ही all mighty God ईश्वर तु ही परमेश्वर ईज़ात अहूरा मस्त अल्लाहु तु ही परमेश्वर ईज़ात अहूरा मस्त अल्लाहु तु नीरा.
Jai Baba. Let us observe silence for a few moments. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. Now prayers and Arti.
O Worthy God, the preserver and protector of all, you are without beginning and without end, non-dual, beyond comparison, and none can measure you. You are without color, without expression, without form, and without attributes. You are unlimited and unfathomable, beyond imagination and conception, eternal and imperishable. You are indivisible, and none can see you but with eyes divine. You always were, you always are, and you always will be. You are everywhere, you are in everything, and you are also beyond everywhere and beyond everything. You are in the firmament and in the depths. You are manifest and unmanifest, on all planes and beyond all planes. You are in the three worlds and also beyond the three worlds. You are imperceptible and independent. You are the Creator, the Lord of Lords, the knower of all minds and hearts. You are omnipotent and omnipresent. You are knowledge infinite, power infinite, and bliss infinite. You are the ocean of knowledge, all-knowing, infinitely knowing, the knower of the past, the present, and the future, and you are knowledge itself. You are all-merciful and eternally benevolent. You are the soul of souls, the one with infinite attributes. You are the Trinity of truth, knowledge, and bliss. You are the source of truth, the ocean of love. You are the Ancient One, the highest of the high. You are Prabhu and Parameshwar. You are the beyond God and the beyond God also. You are Parabrahma, Allah, Ilahi, Yastan, Ahura Mazda, and God the Beloved. You are named Isa, the only one worthy of worship. We repent, O God, most merciful, for all our sins, for every thought that was false or unjust or unclean, for every word spoken that ought not to have been spoken, for every deed done that ought not to have been done. We repent for every deed and word and thought inspired by selfishness, and for every deed and word and thought inspired by hatred. We repent most specially for every lustful thought and every lustful action, for every lie, for all hypocrisy, for every promise given but not fulfilled, and for all slander and backbiting. Most specially also we repent for every action that has brought ruin to others, for every word and deed that has given others pain, and for every wish that pain should befall others. In your unbounded mercy, we ask you to forgive us, O God, for all these sins committed by us, and to forgive us for our constant failures to think and speak and act according to your will. Beloved God, help us all to love you more and more, and more and more, and still yet more, till we become worthy of union with you, and help us all to hold fast to Baba's Daman till the very end. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Shiva, नाव भर धरिए करावे तो हमें चाहिए हमारा ना खुदा है मेरा बाबा शहरी के बातू हमारा ना खुदा है मेरा बाबा शहरी के बातू जावे नार जलसनी कर खुद रत्न परमात्म आशा भक्तों ने